Welcome to Saturday Night at the Movies. I'm your host, Glenn Holland. Saturday night's movie is McLintock at 8 p.m. on WQLN PBS. It was directed by Andrew V. McLaughlin from an original screenplay by James Edward Grant. McLintock stars John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, with Patrick Wayne, Stephanie Powers, Jack Knudsen, Chill Wills, Yvonne DiCarlo, and Jerry Van Dyke. In 1895, George Washington G.W. McLintock is a self-made cattle, mining, and timber baron and the richest man in the territory. On his ranch near the town that bears his name, McLintock has lived like a bachelor since his wife Catherine left him without explanation 2 years earlier. She has since been living the life of a socialite in the haunts of the rich in the East. McLintock's daughter Rebecca has also been away, but now she's returning home from college. McLintock often finds himself at odds with a longtime enemy and government bureaucrat, Matt Douglas, as well as an Indian agent named Agard and the territorial governor, Cuthbert H. Humphrey. But McLintock has friends too, including his longtime right-hand man, Drago, the general store owner, Jake Birnbaum, Sheriff Jeff Lord, the leaders of the Comanche Indians, and the local panhandlers. A new group of potential settlers has recently moved near town under the guidance of Matt Douglas, creating new tensions with the Comanches. While inspecting a shipment of cattle headed for the east, McLintock warns the settlers that the Mesa Verde isn't cut out to be farming land. It's too dry and unforgiving, and a previous group of would-be settlers didn't last a year. One of the new arrivals, a young man named Devlin Warren, is the sole support of his mother and younger sister after the death of his father shortly after they moved to the territory. After McLintock's warning, Dev asks him for a job. McLintock refuses, but an old ne'er-do-well named Bunny Dull advises Dev to try begging him. This time McLintock does offer Dev a job, but Dev responds angrily, disgusted with himself for resorting to begging. McLintock still hires him, telling him that fair pay for a day's work means you're not giving me anything and I'm not giving you anything. We both hold up our heads. After sampling some biscuits made by Dev's attractive mother, McLintock hires her as well, allowing his elderly cook Ching to retire. As McLintock awaits his daughter Becky's return, he's surprised to learn that his estranged wife Catherine is also back in town seeking a divorce and planning to take their daughter back east with her. Soon she's back in the ranch house, ordering everyone around and reacting with distaste to everything that McLintock does, and to the presence of his pretty new cook. In 1963, John Wayne was still trying to recover financially and professionally from the losses he suffered in producing, directing, and starring in 1960's The Alamo. Wayne's daughter, Aisha, later described The Alamo as more than an obsession. It was the most intensely personal project of his career. But despite being the fifth highest grossing movie of 1960, its high cost of production forced Wayne into heavy personal debt. He borrowed money from United Artists, using as collateral the back catalog of his production company, Batjack. It took 5 years and success in Europe and Japan for The Alamo finally to break even. Wayne later said, "That picture lost so much money I can't buy a pack of chewing gum in Texas without a co-signer." McLintock was Batjack's first project after The Alamo and was intended to replenish both Wayne's finances and his box office clout. The film's story was a gumbo of popular elements from earlier Wayne films, embellishing a loose adaptation of Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew set in the Old West. The film paired Wayne with Maureen O'Hara for the fourth time and included a veritable who's who of character actors familiar from Wayne's previous films with John Ford, as well as members of his own family, including his son Michael as producer. No matter how you look at it, McLintock, in story, production, and point of view was John Wayne's movie all the way, right down to the exclamation point of the title. Although it might seem inevitable that John Wayne's attempt to regain his popularity at the box office would take the form of a Western, it was probably less inevitable that the Western would turn out to be a raucous, knockabout comedy. But both producer Michael Wayne, the star's oldest son, and director Andrew V. McLaughlin, son of John Wayne's frequent co-star and drinking buddy Victor McLaughlin, thought Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew was ripe for an Old West adaptation. Screenwriter James Edward Grant added elements from two movies directed by John Ford that starred John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara: the 1950 romantic western Rio Grande and the romantic comedy drama set in Ireland of the 1920s, 1952's The Quiet Man. Those familiar with The Quiet Man will recognize the climactic public humiliation of O'Hara's character, as well as the phrases "woman of the house" and "patty fingers" that appear in both films. A prolific scenarist, Grant had previously written the screenplay for The Alamo and several other John Wayne films, including 1949's Sands of Iwo Jima and 1953's Hondo. Wayne said of Grant in a 1972 interview for Film Comment, "Jimmy was a short story writer. Now, a short story writer doesn't have all the voluminous language that dulls a scene. He had to make the dialogue give character to a person and progress the story. And that's practically what John Ford as a director did all the time. Ford cut through all the nuance and all that crap and got down to the basic story. He put the nuance in with the camera." McLintock, Beneath the Rough and Tumble, has a clear ideological point of view, and that point of view is Wayne's own. McLintock promoted his ideas about manhood, friendship, relations between the sexes, education, family, and the negative cinematic representations of Native Americans in his previous films. It also reflected his general distrust of government and his political enemies. McLintock's primary rival for Catherine's affections, for example, is the territorial governor Cuthbert H. Humphrey, an obvious surrogate for then Senator and later Vice President Hubert H. Humphrey, liberal Democrat Wayne despised. According to a story in Daily Variety in 1962, much of the location shooting for McLintock took place in Old Tucson, Arizona, a mock Western town first built for a 1940 Columbia Western starring Jean Arthur and William Holden titled, appropriately, Arizona. Other location filming took place in Nogales near the Mexican border. When Wayne needed 500 longhorn cattle for a scene, the Mexican government loaned him a herd for the shoot. In the film, the steer's nationality is betrayed by their horns. They tip up, while the horns of American longhorns tip down. The protracted slapstick comedy scenes in McLintock, like the mudhole fight and McLintock's pursuit of Catherine at the film's conclusion, took their toll on members of the cast. One stuntman needed 15 stitches after banging his head as he fell into the mudhole. But Maureen O'Hara insisted on being in the thick of the rub and tumble. In her autobiography, "'Tis Herself," she described the perils involved in filming her fall into a water trough. "Had I fallen too long, I'd have snapped my neck. Too short, and I'd have snapped my arms and legs. If my elbows had not been tucked in tightly enough to my body, I'd have broken my arms and shoulders as well. At 42 years of age, you'd think I'd have known better." Critical reaction to McLintock was tepid. Bosley Crowther wrote in a review for the New York Times, "Putting Wayne and O'Hara together once again in McLintock sounded like a promising idea. The only thing missing to make a rousing Western variation of The Quiet Man is Mr. Ford himself. If the film doesn't quite come off, it is not for lack of effort. Mr. Wayne is in there swinging all the way. His combatants of either sex seem to love it." As did audiences. McLintock became John Wayne's most popular and successful film of the 1960s. Its success allowed Wayne and Batjack to regain control of its back catalog from United Artists and restored much of Wayne's box office luster. But there were some personal costs. In an interview for the Criterion edition of McLintock in 2005, Maureen O'Hara recalled her co-star's quest for hard-hitting authenticity in the climactic spanking scene. "He really spanked me," she said. "My bottom was black and blue for weeks." Please join us again next time for another Saturday Night at the Movies. I'm Glenn Holland. Good night.